Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. This is Canada Today Youth Edition. I'm your host, Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan, and boy, do we got a doozy of a show just for you. Now, you know where I'm sitting right now, it's in a building. Probably where you are right now watching this is in a building. Buildings are one of those things that we see it's just there. And we may sometimes forget that someone actually had to design it, someone actually had to build it, someone actually had to put it together and assemble it, spala, so that, when people they say, having a roof over our heads, this is not something that just falls from the sky. This is something that is real heavy lifting. And so we wanted to dive a little bit more into this industry, the whole building industry. And we got two very, very special guests here today. Let's start off with Brother Sohaib Shafi. And mashallah, he is after majoring in civil engineering and specializing in construction management and building science with a minor in business from the University of Toronto. Sohaib is the current CEO at the family-owned Stallion Construction. Holy cow, we got Stallion Construction in the house. The family business started by his father, an immigrant from Pakistan who has trained him in the art of construction and business. Stallion Construction has experience with many construction projects, including custom homes, restaurants, salons, daycares, medical centers, offices. And right now, they're currently underway with a community project with building the Meadowvale Islamic Center. Through the business, the family's been able to aid the community in any way that they can, especially the Muslim community. Sohaib and Stallion Construction aim to continuously grow and be a source of support and unity for our community. MashaAllah, Sohaib is so awesome. Mr. CEO of Stallion Construction. It's great to have you here, and it's going to be a blast hearing your perspective on this entire topic. With us here today as well, she's going to be joining in later on, is Amira Babeiti. She's a graduate from the Daniels Faculty of Architecture with a minor in human geography. Amira is on the board of directors for the startup nonprofit organization called Global Sustainable Foods, and she has strengthened linkages between cities and their respective local farmers. She contributes to the establishment of a classroom for Syrian refugees children in Lebanon's rural community. And with that, once Amira stops by, it's going to be fun to hear her side of things. She's going to be more on the architectural side of things. We got Sohaib talking more about the construction side. Now, Brother Sohaib, mashallah, let's kick us off with a story. For our viewers here, it's always a great idea to get to know the person, get to know the guest. And what better way to get to know someone than through a story? So, Brother Sohaib, could you walk us through, share with us, how did you end up in Stallion Construction? Although it's a family business, sometimes some people choose to walk away from their parents' footsteps, their father's footsteps, but yet you chose to stay. So walk us through it. What's your story about how you got involved with Stallion Construction?
Alaikum assalam. Thank you, Muhammad, for that. So the story begins in high school when I was deciding what to do for my major. So my dad suggested, hey, do engineering. It's very versatile. And I was like, why not? I didn't really put much thought into it. I was like, I like physics, I like math, so why not, right? So it started with that, something very, basic. It wasn't like, I dreamed of this my entire life, right? So that's how it started. And throughout university, you realize that engineering is very versatile. So my advice to anyone that doesn't know what to do something versatile, right? Such as engineering, right? You can go into business, you can go into other fields once you've done engineering, right? So throughout university, actually, I was not, planning to go into Stallion. I wasn't sure. But then actually what, pushed me towards it was my father-in-law. The first time I met him, he actually mentioned that having your own business is a sunnah. So I was like, oh, all right, then, no question about it, right? So that's how I decided to, let me start, working in the family business. That's pretty much how it started. And my father, of course, his story, he started, many, many years ago. He's been working really hard, and like, mashallah, without his struggles, like, there's no way I would be here right now, right?
Mashallah, so he laid the foundation, he laid the he laid the groundwork, no pun intended, for you to continue this journey. And mashallah, a good point as well to mention that it's it's a good opportunity to say that he really helped you, inspire you to be really where you are right now. And mashallah, Sister Amira, if you're on here as well, feel free to come on in and share your story. I know we introduced you to our viewers, and so wanted to share with you. Could you kindly share with us? I mean, mashallah, you're a graduate, just like a recent graduate in architecture. Walk us through, how did you get involved with this whole building industry? Out of all the different fields that you could have chosen, you decided to go into this one. What's the story behind that?
Well, the story kind of starts off with high school. I went to Gordon Grayden. It's known for its IBT program, and then I realized, business isn't really for me. So then I switched to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and I took a lot of advanced placement English courses. And in that, I found out that I'm really into poetry and expanding my creativity. So then when it came time to apply for university, I applied to so many different programs and only one architecture program at U of T. And by chance, I got in. So I said, if I get in, I'm going to go. Like, it's probably my calling, alhamdulillah. And, it led me to where I am today. So it's good.
Very nice, very nice. Look at that. So it's just out of all the different possibilities, here you are now. Amazing. So I'm gonna just bounce back to Brother Sohaib for a second, just to carry this conversation forward with regards to the whole construction industry for a moment, just to tackle that. Now, when I say construction, so many things come to mind, right? There's so many connotations. Could be positive, could be negative when someone says that they're working in the construction industry. Brother Sohaib, out of curiosity, from your experience, when you look around, maybe particularly within the Muslim or communities, how do they look at construction? What are some things that you've noticed when you proudly say that I'm from Stallion Construction and I do this? Do you get a range of mixed reactions from folks? Like, what's the general perception, in your opinion, about how people view construction as an industry?
So, I mean, I guess the initial reaction when people hear that is like, oh, that's like super cool, because like they see like all these like giant machines and like people working like hands-on with like really like cool tools and everything. So a lot of people are impressed. I think there is also a misconception that if you're not that good at school, then you should go into something like construction or the trades, which I disagree with, because the people we work with, the trades, everyone's very well educated, and you can even get like very high degrees of education. Like, for example, a PEng is like a doctor of engineering, right? It's amazing, right? And so you need very high education for that. And obviously within construction you have like on-site stuff, but you also have like office work, design work, and you want someone very educated that's going to build your house or design your house, design the bridges, design the roads that we drive on and everything, right? And also in terms of education, one thing that I really love about construction is that there is just infinite learning, right? You can't ever just say you've mastered like all of construction, right? That doesn't happen, right? You can master parts of it, but then there's so much more to learn, right? If you master, for example, framing a house, right? You also have to learn, how do I do plumbing? How do I do HVAC? How do I manage other people? The building code, all the other different codes, the plumbing code, electrical code. So I think, like for the most part, I think we do have a positive view of engineering and construction. But yeah, very few people do have that misconception that it's, I guess, requires low education.
I see. All right. Thank you for sharing that. So, Sister Amira, from your side, what do you think? I know you're tackling things from a different angle, not necessarily being on the ground with construction, but with architecture and your studies and being where you are right now. What is the general perception, in your opinion, about the whole building industry that you found to be true?
Well, I just recently graduated, so I feel like I'm starting to just wet my toes in the field and getting insight into what design, construction, and building really is. I'm working at Restoration Hardware, and there I get to learn a lot about interior design. Honestly, the industry is a great place to be in because there's so much versatility and there's so many different things that you could take on. Brother Sohaib mentioned design. I think design and construction work hand in hand. You need to express and really interact and be creative if you want to create something meaningful. And I think that with how the world's kind of modernizing and changing, especially with COVID, you need a lot of flexibility in this industry, and you need to have an adaptable mind and a creative spirit. So I think that's kind of where I sit in the field, less with the logistics and the actual building, but more as like a curator. So thinking things through and thinking about innovative ways to create spaces. And I'm very happy to be here. And I think that if it's something that someone wants to pursue or work within, it's a great field.
Mashallah. So that's good. So you're coming at it pretty much fresh in a way, right? You're getting what was the phrase you said? Like getting your toes wet. So there's that, and yeah. So you're stepping into it. So that's great. You're like at the now. Having said that, when you first got in, or where you are right now, did you have any sort of like preconceived notions? Did someone tell you about it? And then when you finally, because I know you graduated, so when you like maybe walk me through the day you got you went into your first class versus the day of your last class, has your impressions or has your opinion of architecture changed? Like, was there anything like that, any transformation in that regard?
Yeah, I definitely think I underwent a huge transformation. You know what, in like the past 4 years, I've had so much information thrown at me, and I'm so grateful for everything that I've learned. But I think the most important learning curve comes when you kind of take a moment to reflect on everything that you've been fed and deciding what's the niche that you kind of want to take on. So my degree kind of gives you an insight into so many different things. Like I learned about urban planning, landscape architecture, and architecture. So there's so many different fields. And right now I'm in this transition phase where I'm kind of seeing what it is that I like. So I can say that my experience or my education kind of was like a plethora of so many different design principles. And what's important is finding out which one speaks to me the most. And that's something that a lot of undergraduate architecture students go through. And I think it's an important turning point to kind of take that moment to slow down and think about what you really excel in. And for me right now, I'm learning about interior design. I'm learning a lot about construction. I'm learning about development, residential development. So I'm going to see where that takes me. But what I could tell the youth is to really just allow yourself to take a moment to soak all the information that you're learning in. A lot of times you tend to let university and the education we get pass us by, but just thinking about every course in the syllabus and what the values and the lessons are in those courses, I think is really important. So yeah,
that's amazing. So we'll tackle more about the whole advice. You got to save some of that for later on about that. So it's great. And again, I don't know, a little fun fact for the viewers here. Like I also studied architecture, right? And so it's a little, there's that connection there. So I hear what you're saying. With architecture, it's all about being a generalist in a way, right? Like you know you're, what is it? What's the phrase? Like jack of all trades, master of none. You get so much exposure in so many different fields. Then if you decide to specialize or zoom in on one particular aspect, that's what you can do. So wonderful. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. Brother Sohaib, I'm curious. I love stories. I would love if you could tell us a story of a time like that, a really challenging project. It's one thing to hear of, people when they're in construction. Yeah, you can get the theory, but like real, I mean, if you're able, of course, if you keep things anonymous, totally cool. Just like a story of, let's say, a really challenging project that you had to work on that just kept you up at night, that just, you know what I mean? Like it was a doozy. And so what would you, do you have something like that to share with us? Like someone who's like in the trenches, in there doing the work. What's the one project that you can think of that really like, yeah, you know what? It's one of those memorable ones that just can't forget.
So there's two that come to mind, both of them actually restaurants. So One of them, it was a really old building, like almost 100 years old, right? So the building had a lot of history to it. And when you have old buildings, when you first go into the site, you know, everything's covered up. You don't necessarily know what you're dealing with. And then, you know, the moment you do the demolition, you're like, what is going on here? Like there's joists that are like burned down, right? So in terms of safety and just like, you know, there's more scope of work added. Things just get more difficult as well for the trades, because then you have to schedule, when you're scheduling them, you have to stagger the schedule instead of just, you know, one trade coming in at a time, finishing what they're doing, the next trade comes in. So what keeps me up at night, I'd say, about for that particular project, I mean, for us, it's like, you know, it happens, we're used to it, we're working, like our job is continuing, it's just that the project's going to be longer. What worries us is that, you know, oh, the clients, like, you know, they weren't prepared for this because there was no way for them to be prepared for this. And now it's going to take, you know, it's going to cost them more money. It's going to take them longer. So we tried to like work with the clients to like mitigate that effect on them and just to, like make it easy on them as well. Right. So it's usually the old buildings that always have like, you know, new things pop up. But then the next time I did a very old building, actually in that same area, like everything went so like a lot more smooth, right? Just because we had like more experience dealing with the really old buildings, so we were able to like prepare everything. We knew how to deal with the inspectors in that area, all that stuff. Another job we did actually for Paramount Fine Foods, we did a downtown renovation for them in like I believe it was 11 days, and that one was just crazy because we had to work day and night, plan everything like 1 or 2 months beforehand, because for them it was a downtown location, prime location, every day counted for them, right? They couldn't, you know, close the store for like a month or two for renovations. They would just lose way too much money. So it was just like our job to like, you know, manage everything, get multiple trades in, have all the material delivered beforehand and have them open like as soon as possible.
Wow. Okay. Look at that. 11 days crunch time. So
oh yeah, I still like look back at them like how did we do that?
how did you pull that off? You know, you look back, woo, you know what I mean? Like it must have been you know, it took a Herculean effort to you know, keep it going. I wonder how many, I don't know if coffee's your cup of tea, but I don't know how many things you downed, but mashallah, that's good. You did it. Here you are, you're smiling. You look back with fond memories, and I think everyone's in good shape and happy. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sister Amira, I'm curious. Do you have this? I know, again, mashallah, we want to reiterate that, you know, you're just getting, you know, you're right at the starting line. But so far, maybe it was a class, maybe it was where you currently are right now. Do you have a favorite moment so far? Like just so people can get a sense of what it is that you're doing and you would love other people to experience as well, because it's so awesome as a career.
Yeah, I think one of the best moments that I've had is kind of just interacting with designers and having their support and their understanding that I'm new to the field. I think that, you know, having a strong sense of community and working in an environment that supports you is really important and critical to your growth. I've had to dabble a lot with AutoCAD, and in UFT, in our undergraduate program, we focus a lot on 3D modeling and rendering, and we used Rhino for that. So just kind of taking a step back and learning a new software. Like I've had experience in it before, but just getting to that level where it's elevated so you could be efficient in a work environment, I think was kind of like a learning curve for me in the past few months. And having that support and that sense of community was really helpful and critical to my growth. And I'm excited to, you know, continue learning and adapting new skills and softwares to elevate my status as a designer. So I think that's important.
That's amazing to hear that you have that safety net, that support system. Super, super, super important. Oh my gosh, when you said AutoCAD and when you said rendering, oh man, like you know, if you want to experience like sabr, like you want to experience patience, like when you're rendering, oh my god, like if you have a computer, you gotta upgrade that, because if you know how many times I remember it, you're working, everything, you're in the zone, everything is good shape, and then suddenly, miraculously, it just freezes on you. So if you ever wanted to have your your patience tested, I was gonna say your tested patience, you know, if you ever wanted that, that just reminded me about, oof, yeah. So AutoCAD and Revit. You did Rhino, you said, yeah, you use Rhino.
I use a lot of Rhino. I think that's one of the great things about the undergrad at U of T, so with Daniels, is that we got to experiment a lot with 3D design and model making. So I got to use a lot of 3D printers, laser cutters, and
Oh yes,
even
laser cutter.
Yeah.
Well, model making, what do you think of it? Yes or no?
So fun. I think once you, honestly, what I created in first and second year was terrible. But then once I, felt a little more confident in how to produce an object or an item, and like what the creative process really entails for me, like finding my groove kind of, I was able to produce a project which I'm really proud of. It's actually on the Daniels website. I did it with
Oh,
two
no
other
way.
students. Yeah. We took it's kind of like a sculpture that reflects on Rem Koolhaas's essay, Junk Space. And we kind of put together a lot of mundane materials used in construction, and we experimented with it to try to see what forms it creates and what shapes it comes up with on its own when you kind of force the items to interact with each other. So a lot of spray foam, hardwood, wires, mesh, and we were able to turn quote unquote junk in the construction process into a really interesting sculptural piece. And I think that's kind of a good reflection on what it means to be a designer, what it means to think creatively, and to just have fun with what your career is and what your passion is. When you really figure out where you stand, you have an opportunity to create cool things with software like AutoCAD and Rhino.
Awesome. So hey, out of curiosity, do you dabble in AutoCAD, like in your position as a CEO in a construction company? Does that ever land on your desk, like where you say, like, I got to do some AutoCAD, I got to do some rendering, or is it more delegated to certain people who are specializing? How does that look for someone, let's just say, who wants to, maybe someone has the ambition of going into construction? If I want to be a construction worker, if I want to be in that field, do you run into AutoCAD? Like, do you find yourself having to click, or?
I love AutoCAD.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, honestly, I like, it's the best. And yeah, our company, a lot of us do know how to use AutoCAD, and it's just so helpful when you have a drawing. And as you guys know, like, you get a drawing from the architect, and sometimes measurements are missing, small things are missing. If you have the AutoCAD drawings, like, not a big deal. You just measure it on AutoCAD, right? The custom house we did recently, actually, we used AutoCAD to make some of the designs. Like in the ceiling, we had coffered ceiling, we had designs in the ceiling, and we used AutoCAD to make sure that the pot lights are in the correct place, so that it kind of complements the design of the ceiling. So yeah, AutoCAD, like, it definitely falls into our lap all the time. And actually, what I've been trying to study recently is making 3D models. So they're called BIM models, building information models. And what that does, it's used mostly for bigger projects, but I think, like, creating like an entire high-rise building. But even for small projects, it's definitely worth doing, because one, it shows everyone what they're getting. The client sees what they're getting. The trades know, it's easier to communicate with the trades what they need to do, what they need to build. And it's just any problems that arise, you're able to fix it, right? For example, one time we got a drawing where the mechanical engineer, he put his ductwork through a freezer, and you can't do that. It doesn't make sense, right? So, but had that been made into a 3D model, everyone would have caught that in the first stage, rather than it goes into permit, it comes to us, and then we tell them, hey, you guys missed this kind of thing, right?
Okay, very
so
cool.
Yeah, I think there's amazing softwares in the future. I expect that the construction industry will be, I guess, adopting software and technology more, right? So it's, if you want to get into construction but you don't want to be hands-on, definitely go into the software side. Like, it's amazing.
Right. So we got AutoCAD's there. Revit is another one. Rhino we talked about. So there's a whole plethora of softwares out there that really deal with the whole architectural construction space. Now, out of curiosity, let's go to Sister Amira for a moment here.
Yeah.
We talked before about, let's say, general observations that you noticed in this whole industry. What are some misconceptions perhaps you want to clear up right from the get-go? I know, again, we want to reiterate that you're just starting out, but let's just say, for instance, maybe something that might be on people's minds is the gender, what do I say? Not the gender gap. What's the word I'm looking for? Like the distribution. Like, people when they think construction, maybe a lot of times the connotation, it's a male dominated field. But in architecture, is it 50-50? This is just one example. Are there any misconceptions out there that you really want to clear up for our viewers here today?
I can't really speak to the construction industry, but I can speak to my own experiences. Just having finished, my undergrad degree. In my program, there was a good diversity between men and women, and however people identified themselves. But, there was like a good mix. The only thing that I do want to say, I guess, is for women to kind of, have the courage to go into engineering. I've had a few friends who took that task on for undergrad, and, it's made them kind of have more of an elevated position, I guess, in society. And a lot of people think that women aren't wanted in the construction industry or in engineering companies, when the truth is, Brother Sohaib actually was one of the people who encouraged me to think like this. But there is a demand to get women in positions where they could, really be part of the creative process and take on a leadership role. So I think encouraging more women to get into engineering. Like if I was good at math, I would have went into engineering for sure.
Whoa. Hang on. One second. You mentioned Sohaib. Okay, well, looks like we got some history over here. We gotta get Sohaib's side of thing. What was, if you're okay and comfortable sharing this, like what was that conversation like? Like what was that like in terms of encouraging Sister Amira to venture off into this kind of field?
So I went to school with Amira's brother. And he's a great guy. He's actually building a hospital in Newfoundland right now. So that's amazing, mashallah. So I think Abe was like dropping me home one day. Amira's in the car. So that's how we met. And then later, when Amira was graduating, she was looking for work, I believe. She asked me, is there space in Stallion right now? So at that time, we weren't hiring. So then I did help her out. If someone comes for help, you should, do your best. So, anything I saw on LinkedIn, I forwarded to her. And that's pretty much how, I was very happy when she messaged me one day and said, hey, that link you forwarded me, I got the job. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And, I was very happy about that. MashaAllah, good for you, Amira.
Thank you.
Look at that. See, that's a heartwarming story to hear during these tumultuous times. That's amazing, though. So it just go. But I guess maybe, Brother Sohaib, if you want to, I guess, because one of the earlier discussions was about the whole dispersion between genders. Is that something out there? Do you have a comment on that in terms of?
Yes, actually. So, okay, yes, it is very hands-on. And when you have a male-dominated field, I guess you could see how the opposite gender might feel uncomfortable, with surrounded by males all the time, right? For the Muslims, one thing to consider, especially I would say in my line of work specifically, when you're on site at a construction site, for example, how are you going to pray, right? It's like as a male, it's already difficult because the washrooms are, it might be a small, tiny washroom where, you have other people using it. Sometimes there's no hot water in wintertime, right? And you're making wudu on a construction site, they're not always heated as comfortably as our houses are, right? Or as an office would be, right? So someone that's young looking to get into their whatever career they want to choose, that's obviously something very important to all of us. Is can I pray at this place, right? Can I fast at this place, right? There's a lot of construction workers that are doing the hands-on work, and they're fasting, long hours, and then they're working with asphalt, for example, which is extremely hot, and it's very labor intensive. Right. So if you're not able to handle that, maybe you shouldn't, go into that field. right? But there are like, ways around it. If the project's close to home, yeah, take your lunch break, go home, make wudu, pray at home, right? Watch what you eat so that you can, go through the day, pray without need to make wudu, right? So yeah, I think that is something to consider. In terms of having, more women in the field, I think it's amazing because obviously you need a lot of variety. Everyone thinks very differently, right? Especially like, for example, when we're building custom homes, recently what happened, so the architect was a male. He designed the house, and the window it was very in the kitchen. It was very high, right? And throughout the house, it was very high. And then the owner, when we're doing the walkthrough, he sees that in the kitchen that, hey, this window's a bit high. Like, it's okay for us. I didn't notice it because I'm like 5'11". I could see fine through the window. He's like, my wife's gonna be standing here quite some time. I think it's too high for her. So then, luckily, we were able to like solve the problem, able to shift the window down, and now he's a lot happier now. But like things like that, had it been a woman as a site supervisor there, she would have maybe noticed that a lot earlier, right? And it would have been a lot easier, a lot simpler to do, right? So it's things like that. It's nice to have women in the field. You're building a building. You're not building just for men. You're building for women as well, obviously, right? So it's definitely beneficial to have women there.
Mashallah, man, that's an interesting story. You never really know these details. I guess the nitty gritty. You never think about some of these stuff. That's amazing and see, there you go, a real life example. Boom, right there in front of you. Wonderful. So now let me maybe shift gears a little bit. Sister Amira, what would you say for someone watching this right now? They're saying, you know what, this intrigues me. This piques my antenna a little, and I'm considering, let's say, architecture or the field of interior design. Are there any resources that you could point towards that really helped you out when you first started, or if you knew then what you know now, like there's this one thing that really helped me out, make sure that I make the right decisions or make sure that my life is smoother? What would be that resource that you could point towards?
I think just looking at a lot of magazines and online platforms. So Architectural Digest is a really good one. Just kind of sifting through materials like that, and researching architectural periods. So like what brutalism is, or modernism and postmodernism, understanding the different phases of architecture and design kind of can give you a leg up when you enter an undergraduate program. That's something that I kind of was introduced to when I started. I had no clue, and I feel like the students who kind of had their foot in the door a little bit and understood the different transitions between how design was conceptualized kind of did a little bit better. And it wasn't until I took the time to actually research and teach myself that in third and fourth year I was able to kind of excel. So just really researching architects, architectural phases, and being in touch with architectural materials that are out there. And the internet's honestly, it's a great resource. And even YouTube, the Architectural Digest YouTube channel is good. And yeah, there's like even Home and Style magazine. That's a Canadian one. So just put yourself out there and search for it. So I think that's what I would advise someone in entering university.
Very cool. So I heard the name Architectural Digest a number of times. So that's one example right there for those who want to, get through it. I think there was a show like Property Brothers, like that. And I think so. Hey, are you familiar with how realistic is that? Like, I think there was like Extreme Makeover Home Edition. You get these kind of maybe from that side. Like, is there a line blurred between reality and reality TV? Like, so is it like, imagine, when they say, oh, we're gonna flip this house in 7 days? Is this like legit?
I mean, we did do the restaurant in 11 days, so it's possible. It's but yeah, mostly what they show on TV, it is very like dramatic, and it's not necessarily the case. I have read online like people that were invited to the show, like, oh yeah, the producer just asked us to act this way or to be surprised at this, whatever it was, right? I think YouTube is a very good place to learn, because that's more, I guess people are more realistic there. In terms of resources, I think the best resource would be, going out and working in that field. I don't think there's any company that would say no to having extra help, right? We have students come and, kind of get their feet wet in the field with us, right? We had one student right now that's working with us. He was actually in like a medical stream, and he decided he wants to try out construction. So we're like, yeah, sure, if you want, there's no harm in it. Come to site, see if you like it, if it's for you or not. Right. And now he's enrolling in a construction program in January. So I think anyone deciding what they want to do, especially if they're going to be paying, thousands of dollars at a university, definitely try out different workplaces, see what you want to do, get some real experience, see what you like, see what you dislike, get some ideas. Right. And another great resource is school, right? Colleges and universities to teach, very well for the construction industry and the building industry and the architecture and different softwares and everything.
So, Jazakallah khair, brother Sohaib. I'm curious though. Let's just say someone watching this, they say, yeah, I mean, sounds great that you're saying that a lot of the construction firms are open, hands open wide, arms open wide to accepting folks who are in. Let's just say someone, for whatever reason, isn't comfortable with that. They're not at that stage of just going out, reaching out to folks. Is there anything online perhaps that you could point to? Like, Sister Amira was mentioning YouTube, and you mentioned YouTube as well. Is there like a YouTube channel that you could point towards and say, you know what, when I'm trying to learn, like I self-taught myself a lot of these things, this one YouTube channel or this one online website really gave me a lot of tools to help me learn faster and quicker, and really gives you a good, accurate depiction of what construction is all about. Is there anything like that you have in your toolbox?
I would say no. Nothing that is that can compare to experience, right? So now experience is like the main thing when it comes to construction and design. So that's like one of the main benefits of having my father in the company, is that he has so much experience that, there's a lot of mistakes that are avoided, right? And like I told you before, when if you're hiring someone in construction, go for the guy that's like 50 or 60 years old, right? It's much better to have someone with experience rather than a young guy that's very energetic. And that's what clients, I guess, like about Stallion, is that they see my father, they see that he has experience, and then they see that myself and our project managers, that we're young and energetic. We can work with technology. We can be energetic. So I think experience definitely trumps all. Go to the site. It's okay. Step out of your comfort zone. Reach out to someone personally, right? See if they know anyone. And then even just being on a construction site, I think, is intimidating for a lot of people. So even just if you just go there and sit there, don't talk to anyone, just observe, look at what's going on, then slowly you'll be more comfortable with it.
Fair enough. So looking into your personal network, and that's one thing. Sister Amira, any advice for that? Like, let's just say someone who wants to get.
Yeah.
I know with COVID, it's getting tougher and tougher to get those things. But what would you say, or something that's helped you out? And what would you say?
I mean, I think definitely experience. So what I'm learning right now, I don't think it measures at all to what I've been taught in school. What I was taught in university, obviously, it was great. And it kind of is tailored, or like my learning experience is tailored to me discovering what I want to pursue for my graduate degree. But the experience of actually going on site and seeing how a home is built, or seeing the attention to detail that's taken to decorating the home and the interiors, I think that in itself is a very lengthy process. And understanding timeline. I don't think I really understood the timeline for building a home or construction until I started working. I saw that it's a very lengthy process, and it takes a lot of communication. So a lot of the skills that I think you learn on the field is, like I said it before, but like communication, taking on leadership, also building your confidence. Like I'm still learning how to do that. And I wouldn't be in a position to learn how to do that if I wasn't interacting with people who have years and years of experience. So just getting that mentorship is important. And it's something that you don't really get in university, right? Like in university, you have an assignment, you have a deadline, you do your best job to get to collect the best research, and then you present it in the most authentic way that you can. But being on the field is definitely a different experience. You see how something is built, you see the amount of time and energy and effort that's taken to create like a finalized product. And I'm learning a lot about detail, like attention to how the interior of the home looks. So making sure that the alignment of a rug is perfect to the alignment of a sofa, details like that. You're not taught that in university. That just comes with being on the job and learning. So.
Marshall, I gotta take a look at my rug to see if it's aligned with my sofa. That's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna check that out. All right, wonderful. Look again. See, this is experience. You can't Google experience. Right? I think that's. I'm gonna reiterate that towards the end as well. But as always, I mean, I hate to say this, but all good things must come to an end. This has been a phenomenal conversation so far, but we would be remiss if we didn't leave on a high note by saying, some parting words of wisdom. I'll take it to you, Sister Amira. I know, mashallah, you're just on your journey.
Yeah.
But someone as a youth, let's just say a sister is watching this right now, looking at you, saying, "Wow, I really want to try this field of maybe interior design, architecture. It might be right for me, but it seems a bit intimidating." Or I really don't know where to begin. What advice would you have for that sister in this regard?
Sorry, just let me think about it for a bit.
No worries. I mean, what would you say has been the most helpful thing for you?
I think finding your confidence and networking, that's really important. If you don't know how to say what you think or feel is right in a situation, then you'll never really get to the goals that you aspire to achieve. And that is really important when you're in the design field. So if you want to enter the field, something that I'm learning, which is quite difficult, is just finding your voice and finding your confidence. But I also think that really put yourself out there, network, and try to be the most authentic version of yourself, and try to be really considerate of how you communicate things. That's really important, right? Because when you just enter the field, you're kind of you're also a student. Like your learning doesn't stop in university. I feel like the beginning of your journey to learn actually starts when you get that first job and you interact with people who have been in the field for years. So really listen. And when you do speak, make sure that you've thought things out and you have confidence in what you're saying. So I think that's something that I'm trying to work on, and I see my mentors doing that, and I aspire to be that way. So that's a piece of advice that I would share.
Mashallah, it sounds like a lot of life advice. No architecture in that. I mean, that's evergreen. Mashallah, find your voice, and
it's a lot. Like when you're in the design space, I think a lot of how you design and the way you design needs to kind of be woven into how you carry yourself. If you really want to make, it's not as technical as it appears to be. If you're trying to create something and you're working in a firm and you're in a team environment, you really need to know how to present yourself and how to communicate what your thoughts are, so you could create that interesting and unique final product. So I think that sense of collaboration, there's a lot of listening that needs to happen, and also confidence for when you do interact and decide to kind of put your idea forward or present what you're thinking, or else whatever you've conceptualized inside your head, it'll never come to be, it'll never come to life. So a lot of design, I think, does have to do with life in general, right? Like design is everything. Even just the laptops that we're using, that was thought through really critically. So it's interwoven, and once you kind of figure out how to like master that, I still haven't yet, but once you figure out how to master the connection between design and how design is like presented and interacts with our daily lives, I think you'll be able to really present and showcase what you've conceptualized inside of your head. But
very cool. Communication is key, and it's a very collaborative field, and you got to find your voice in making that happen. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sister Amira. And let's okay, for the home run here, brother Sohaib. Let's say there's a brother watching this. He's getting his hard hat and he's pulling up a jackhammer and he's just wanting to get into it, but he has no idea where to start. He isn't sure even if construction is right for him. So what advice would you give, brother Sohaib, for our brothers out there? Let's just say A, who is looking to get into construction, and B, for those who who are unsure about construction being right for them. What's that litmus test? What's that thing that you can, to separate the ones who really want to do this versus someone who wants to just dabble into it? What would you say as advice for those?
I mean, there's a difference between, I guess, starting your own construction business and also in, working in construction, right? For example, let's stick with working in the construction field for now as an employee. So there's things to consider, like, you're on site. It's it's hands-on. Like, even if you're just a project manager and, you're not technically supposed to be like, using the shovel, digging holes, or like drilling 2x4s and making framing, like it ends up happening, right? If you're on the job site, some work needs to be done. You don't want to wait for someone else to do it. You're going to do it, right? Also, something to consider is that, your own personality. Are you able to handle confrontation, right? Because you're dealing with a lot of different trades. If someone's working on something for a couple hours and, they didn't do it correctly, you got to be able to tell them, hey, that's not correct. You need to fix it, right? And people do get like confrontational, and you need to have, again, that confidence, right? That what I'm saying is correct. The job needs to be done correctly, and you need to have that, I guess, backing as well, right? For example, for myself, if for like before, when a trade, if they mess something up, right, and they weren't listening to me because like, oh, he's just a young guy, whatever, then I had the blessing of, I call my dad and then he calls them, and then then they get set straight, right? So again, it is very confrontational. Sometimes it's dirty. Like sometimes if you're working outside and it's raining, it's going to be muddy, right? So those are things to consider, right? And there are also very long hours, right? Sometimes workers will start at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. If your site's an hour away, hour and a half away, you need to make that drive, right? And then legally they can work up until 7 p.m., right? So sometimes the workers do work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So that's something to consider as well, the long hours. When you're owning a construction business, so one thing that took a very long time for us to develop is, getting contacts, getting investors, because a lot of large projects, the contract in Ontario, the standard contract, CCDC2, what it requires is that the payments are made after the work is done, right? So that means the construction company has to have money on hand, or they need to, take a loan out. And as Muslims, obviously, we want to avoid interest, right? So, luckily for us, my father has so much experience in the field, so many connections that, when you need to do that, you should have a halal means to do it, right? So you can, get investors, or make different payment terms with the client so that you get advanced payment and whatnot, right? So there's a lot of different things to think about as well, right? Are you going to be able to do that? Are you going to be able to, get investors? Are you going to be able to do the marketing and the sales, with just like with any business, right? So yeah, there's a lot to think about in construction, but once you have that experience, then I think it's definitely very rewarding. It is very intimidating and difficult at first, but it is also very rewarding at the end.
MashaAllah, lots to think about. Great stuff. The confrontation piece, that's a big one. I guess personalities, people butt heads all the time, and the plumbers going at it with the technician, so to speak.
Yeah.
Maybe you never know, right? You never know. That's amazing. But I think we got a good picture. We got a nice inside info in terms of what it's like to be in the building industry. Thank you both, brother Sohaib and sister Amira, for sharing your thoughts. It's been phenomenal. You've been tremendously helpful in regards to educating our viewers, highlighting and spotlighting a lot of the things that maybe behind the scenes that people don't know about. And for those who are thinking about it, I think this would kind of be a step towards clarity. So thank you both so much, brother Sohaib and sister Amira, for being on the show. It's been real fun. It's been real fun. All
Thanks
right.
so much, Muhammad.
Anytime, anytime.
Yes.
Anytime. So for those of you tuning in online, I just want to say one thing to you, mashallah. The whole field of construction, the whole field of architecture, this thing has been lifelong. Like this whole industry has been like since the pyramids, even before that. So this isn't like this has been something that's been a long, long, long time. It's a noble profession. It's a profession that is needed now more than ever. You'll see it all the time. People need people to build the house that you're in, the apartment that you're in, the school that you're in, the office that you're in, the place at the malls. Well, I know now with COVID things are less, but you know what I mean. The places that you're in, the roof that's over your head, someone had to build it. And so for us as Muslims, we just don't want to build buildings. We want to build character. We want to build folks who are really in the field because they really want to be in that field. And so with the help and support of their fellow Muslims, the people in the community, if you really want to go for it, man, construction is a viable career, and architecture as well, interior design. Take your pick. You got to build things from the ground up. So with that, as always, uh, hope you enjoyed today's show. Tune in on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is your brother, Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. And with that, stay strong, stay safe, and stay proud to be Muslims. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.